The Boston Celtics have reportedly pulled off a blockbuster deal, sending Finals MVP Jaylen Brown to the Los Angeles Lakers. After months of trade rumors, Boston has reshaped its championship core. Stayed till the end to see the star players and draft picks the Lakers reportedly gave up to land Brown. The Boston Celtics used Jaylen Brown as the centerpiece of their failed Giannis Antetokounmpo trade offer. Let that land for a second. Not a draft pick, not a young piece off the bench. The Finals MVP, the guy who carried this franchise through one of the most grueling championship runs in recent memory. Boston put him in the trade package for Giannis. The deal fell apart, and now the whole league knows it. The Celtics tried to use Brown as an asset in trade talks involving the former Milwaukee Bucks superstar. Antetokounmpo would eventually be sent to the Miami Heat. And now the Celtics face the hangover of Brown, knowing his name was thrown around. That's the situation. That's the powder keg, and there's no way to quietly walk it back. Not when you're a publicly traded enterprise playing basketball under a microscope. Now, his future in Boston is in question, and the league didn't waste a single hour before starting to speculate. Every front office in the country started making phone calls. Every analyst started running scenarios. And right in the middle of all of it, sitting on the other side of the country with Luka Doncic and a desperate need for a two-way wing, were the Los Angeles Lakers. But to understand why this is the situation it is, you have to understand what Brown just did this past season. Because this isn't a guy whose value is declining. This is a player who, against all odds, went out and had the best year of his career while his franchise was crumbling around him. With Jason Tatum sidelined for almost the entire year recovering from a torn Achilles, Brown stepped into the #1 role and put together a career year, averaging 28.7 points, 6.9 rebounds, and 5.1 assists per game. He led the Boston Celtics to a 56-26 record and finished 6th in NBA MVP voting. Think about that. Tatum, Brown's co-star, the guy who carries equal billing, wasn't there. And Brown didn't just survive. He made them the second best team in the Eastern Conference. For his efforts, he earned All-NBA second-team recognition and finished 5th in MVP voting. Brown added the accolade to a resume that already includes a championship, a Finals MVP award, and 5 All-Star Game appearances. His value on the open market right now, it's about as high as it can get for a wing player in the NBA, which makes what Boston did, putting him in a trade package, all the more explosive. And then the wheels fell off. Boston blew a 3-1 series lead to the Philadelphia 76ers, a team they've historically owned. That kind of collapse in the first round against a team they should have handled doesn't just sting. It changes how everything looks. It changes how management sees the roster. It changes the entire conversation around what needs to happen next. In 4 losses, the Celtics shot just 27.4% from three-point range on 179 attempts. In Game 7, head coach Joe Mazzola rolled out a starting lineup that had never played a minute together. A season that looked like it was building toward another deep playoff run ended in the most chaotic fashion possible. And in the chaos, Boston's front office started asking the kind of questions that lead to blockbuster trades. Then things got even messier with Brown. Less than 24 hours after the loss, he hopped on a live stream and called the 2025-26 season his favorite, despite what many viewed as arguably the most embarrassing collapse of the postseason. That comment spread instantly. It got clipped. It went everywhere. And instead of calming the waters, it poured gas on a fire that was already raging, because it didn't just invite media scrutiny. It opened the door to questions about whether Brown was even on the same page as the organization at all. It's round 200-something of the explosive feud between veteran ESPN commentator Stephen A. Smith and Celtics star Jaylen Brown. It's now reached a boiling point. After weeks of bubbling tension following the Celtics' disappointing postseason exit, Brown called out ESPN and Smith specifically during his trip to France. Brown didn't just sit quietly and let the rumors swirl. He pushed back publicly, and Stephen A. didn't fold. Smith officially fired back at the all-star forward, escalating this war of words. Smith posted a blunt warning on his X page. "Enough is enough. Jaylen Brown, I accept your challenge." Accompanying it was a clip from his show in which he responded directly and aggressively to Brown calling him and his colleagues unethical. This wasn't just a media beef anymore. This was a full-blown public standoff between one of the most visible players in the NBA and one of the most loud voices in sports media. Neither the ESPN frontman nor the Celtics superstar was willing to back down. It stemmed from a seemingly harmless Twitch livestream last month, where Brown reflected on the Celtics roller coaster season from his dungeon. So now you've got a first-round exit, a player calling his worst season his favorite, a public war with ESPN, and a front office that openly tried to trade him. The situation in Boston was, and still is, genuinely messy, and the Lakers are watching all of it. Now here's where it gets interesting, because while all of this was going on publicly, the Celtics front office was also doing something behind the scenes that most teams almost never do. They were actively talking to other teams about moving their own star player. Not as part of a swap for another star, just talking. Brett Siegel of Clutch Points reported that Brown has not asked the Celtics for a trade, citing league sources close to the situation. That is a significant clarification amid a noisy offseason in Boston, where his name has continued to surface in trade chatter after the Celtics explored major roster changes. So this isn't a player-driven exodus, this is coming from the organization. That matters because it tells you something about how Boston sees the path forward. Brown has also given no public indication that he wants out. Earlier this offseason, he said on a Twitch stream that if the decision were solely his, he would play in Boston for the next 10 years. He wants to stay. The franchise is the one entertaining the idea of moving him. And that asymmetry, player loyal to the city, organization quietly shopping him, is going to define this whole saga through the summer and into whatever happens next. The Celtics' first-round exit has seemingly called his future in Boston into question. According to Jake Fisher of the Stein Line, the Celtics haven't engaged in meaningful trade discussions revolving around Brown, but they haven't ruled it out as a possibility. That's a very specific and deliberate message from Boston. It's not a denial, it's not an endorsement. It's a front office playing leverage, keeping the price high, keeping teams hungry, and seeing what comes back. Despite the rumors, Celtics president of basketball operations Brad Stevens has publicly said that Brown is still a big part of the franchise. Jaylen Brown is a big part of us, Stevens said. But front offices say things like that all the time, right up until the trade goes through. Every "we're not trading him" in NBA history has eventually been followed by a trade. Stevens' words carry weight, but they don't close the door. Whether Boston will trade Brown or hang on to him and chase another ring with a retooled roster around him, and Tatum remains to be seen. What we do know is that Boston is at least having conversations with teams about Brown, according to multiple reports. What fans also understand is what a lot of teams around the league believe as well. After so publicly dangling him in a potential Giannis trade, the relationship is fractured and bringing him back is, at best, awkward. The Celtics remain actively engaged in trade talks to move Brown, with multiple teams interested in acquiring the All-Star forward, sources told ESPN. Multiple teams, not one whisper, not one vague rumor. Active conversations with multiple parties. Boston knows what they have, and they're not going to give it away, but they're clearly willing to listen. According to Mark Stein, 3 teams have expressed interest. Portland, Houston, and Atlanta are teams routinely mentioned as suitors with Brown interest, but the sheer salary numbers do add a layer of complexity to any talks. The complexity here is real. This isn't a simple swap. Brown's deal is massive, and any team taking him on needs to know exactly what they're signing up for financially. Brown is entering the 3rd year of his $285 million Supermax contract extension and is set to make $57.1 million during the 2026-27 season. That number, $57 million, in a single season. You're not just trading for a player. You're trading for a financial commitment that touches every other roster decision you make for the next 3 years. And yet teams are still calling. Because when you watch what this man just did without Tatum, you understand why. ESPN's Brian Windhorst said on the Tuesday, June 23 edition of Get Up, he anticipated a bidding war for Brown, now that the Celtics made him available in the Antetokounmpo trade talks. A bidding war for a player on a Supermax. That tells you everything about how the league values what Brown brings. There's no discount here, and Boston knows it. Multiple reports have suggested the Bucks chose the Heat's trade package over the Celtics, in part because there were fears Brown would not want to remain in Milwaukee long-term. So even when Boston tried to include him in a monster deal, the receiving team had reservations, not about his talent, but about whether he'd commit. That's a layer that doesn't go away no matter where he's headed. Any team trading for Brown also has to answer the question, will he want to be here? I'm not convinced he's going to be on the team in October, I think it's 50-50. The Ringer's Bill Simmons, a Celtics superfan, said on his podcast in the aftermath of the team's failed attempt. If you're a Celtics fan, and the most famous Celtics fan in media is giving it a coin flip, you know this thing is real. The offseason is young, and this story isn't close to over. Now, let's look at the landscape of teams involved. Because the Lakers aren't the only ones circling, but they might be the most natural fit and the one with the most to gain. NBA insider Mark Stein reported that the Portland Trail Blazers, Houston Rockets, and Atlanta Hawks have all expressed interest in Brown. Each of those teams has a different pitch. Portland has cap space and young assets. Atlanta has momentum, but Houston might be the most compelling non-Lakers option. Many view the Rockets as the most logical fit, pairing him with Kevin Durant as a secondary shot maker, and reuniting him with his former Celtics coach, Ime Udoka. That's a real pitch. Udoka knows Brown, knows how to use him, knows his tendencies, and pairing him with Durant in Houston gives you a duo capable of making real noise in the West. But even with Houston in the mix, the conversation keeps coming back to one place: the purple and gold. Doncic, 27, has reportedly asked the Lakers for an A-list big man to play alongside next season. That's the ask. An A-list player. Not a nice piece. Not a plug-and-play backup. A star. And while his specific request is for front-court help, the idea of pairing him with a proven two-way wing at the caliber of Brown has the entire basketball world buzzing. Because if you can't get the big man Doncic wants, you can at least give him the co-star nobody can stop. ESPN's Stephen A. Smith has already made a case for the Lakers to acquire Brown to slot alongside Doncic. Give me the Lakers before you give me the Golden State Warriors, if you talking about what's an ideal spot for a guy like Jaylen Brown, Smith said on Friday's First Take. And when Stephen A. is making the case for you to go to a specific franchise, the entire NBA is listening. That's part of how this story went from a rumor to a national conversation overnight. Here's the thing about acquiring Jaylen Brown. Everybody wants him. Wanting is the easy part. Paying is where this gets complicated. Because Brad Stevens and the Celtics front office are not naive. They know exactly what they have. They know what he just did this past season. And they've set a price that makes most front offices flinch. According to ESPN NBA insider Shams Charania, the Celtics have asked some interested teams for at least 4 first-round picks in exchange for Brown. My understanding is that in some cases, the Celtics have asked for at least 4 first-round picks for Jaylen Brown. Charania said, 4 first-rounders, not picks and players. Not a star-for-star swap. 4 future first-round picks, plus whatever players are needed to make the salaries match. That's the floor. That's where Boston starts the conversation. The Celtics ultimately believe they don't have to make a deal, that they can repair any damage to their relationship with the All-NBA wing. Coming off his best season with that, they feel they have leverage and are keeping the asking price high when they do talk Brown trade, reports ESPN's Shams Charania, who said on Get Up. In some cases, the Celtics have asked for at least 4 first-round picks for Jaylen Brown. Boston's leverage here is real. They don't need to sell. They're entertaining offers, but they're not desperate. And that not desperate posture is exactly why the price is so steep. So what does that price mean for the Lakers? Because LA doesn't have an unlimited supply of first-round picks to throw around. Every pick they give away is a piece of the future they're burning. Perhaps the Lakers would need to be involved in a multi-team trade framework to begin capturing the attention of the Boston front office, and a trade package would likely need to contain the 3 first-round picks LA owns. 3 picks from the Lakers. Already, we're at the ceiling of what they can realistically offer in draft capital alone, and Boston's asking for 4. So the math only works if you start adding players into the equation. The opportunity to potentially trade for Brown has arrived at a time when the Lakers have 2 high-value sign-and-trade options, LeBron James and Austin Reaves. Such a move could only work if one of the 2 is actually interested in going to Boston, but the door is at least partially open. If either is interested in doing so, then a sign-and-trade revolving around Brown and Reaves could get the ball rolling on a blockbuster deal. 2 players who could be packaged, 2 different potential futures for the Lakers, depending on which way the dominoes fall. LeBron or Reaves, maybe both, heading east while Brown comes west. Let's talk about the Reaves piece first, because Austin Reaves is the player most closely connected to a potential Brown deal. His name shows up in almost every proposed framework, and his situation at the Lakers this offseason is its own subplot, while the Los Angeles Lakers have now finally gotten their answer regarding the future of Austin Reaves. After the latter signed a 4-year deal worth $185 million, they must now turn their attention to other questions pertaining to their roster. So Reaves re-signed. He's locked in. That changes the calculus slightly, because now, if the Lakers want to use him in a sign and trade to get Brown, they'd have to flip the deal almost immediately after he signed it. That's not impossible in the NBA, but it's complicated. In an instant, you do that, no question. Lakers Nation's Trevor Lane said of trading for Brown. But once again, keep in mind, Austin has to be signed and traded. He's going to want to go to where you are sending him. That's the human element that gets lost in trade discussions. Reaves isn't just a salary. He's a person who just signed a massive deal, presumably because he wants to be in Los Angeles, next to Doncic. You can't just move him wherever the math works. He has to agree to it. Reaves' game has clearly improved, but at the moment, he doesn't offer the championship-level co-star needed for a serious title push alongside Doncic. That's the honest take. Reaves is an elite complementary player. He can get buckets. He's improved every year, but there's a ceiling there. And when you have Doncic as your engine, you need more than a ceiling piece next to him. You need a player who can take over a game independently. Brown does that. Brown is a former NBA champion and Finals MVP, which are notable accolades that keep him high in the conversation of top wings in the league. His two-way game is one of the best, and Doncic is all too familiar with it. Familiar in a very specific way. In the 2024 NBA Finals, when Doncic was at Dallas and Brown was at Boston, it was Brown who made Doncic's life a nightmare on the defensive end. Doncic knows firsthand what Brown looks like when he's locked in. And now the question is, can you imagine that guy playing for you instead of against you? In the 2024 NBA Finals, Doncic was guarded primarily by Brown and couldn't replicate his scoring form that took the Dallas Mavericks to the showpiece. The man who slowed Luka Doncic in the NBA Finals, not stopped him but slowed him, could be Doncic's next running mate. The irony of that is almost too perfect for the NBA. Now let's talk about the LeBron James angle, because LeBron's future is one of the biggest wild cards hanging over this entire negotiation, and it affects whether the Lakers can even make a move for Brown work financially. Doncic's backcourt mate, Austin Reaves, has already been secured for the long haul, leaving LeBron James as the major uncertain domino. LeBron, still a superstar at 41, still capable of making everyone around him better, but also a player whose contract situation could free up enough flexibility to make a Brown trade viable. If he takes a shorter deal at a lower number, or exits via free agency, the Lakers suddenly have room to maneuver in ways they simply don't have right now. The prevailing sentiment, according to more than half a dozen sources around the league, is that James will likely return to the Lakers if he comes back, with the Golden State Warriors presenting a realistic second option. The most the Warriors could offer James is the $15.1 million non-taxpayer mid-level exception, $37 million less than what he made last season. The Lakers could offer James a maximum of 3 years and $182 million to stay, but nobody around the league expects the team to offer him anywhere close to that. So LeBron comes back, probably, but at a reduced number, which means the Lakers could theoretically use his contract structure as a piece of the puzzle in acquiring Brown, especially if the Lakers lose James this summer. Adding Brown would recoup what James brought to the table, and then some. Last season, Brown was firmly in the NBA MVP race for much of the year. Even without Jason Tatum helping shoulder some of the load, he led the Celtics to the second-best record in the Eastern Conference with 56 wins. Replace LeBron with Brown. That's not a downgrade. On paper, depending on what you value, it might be an upgrade. A younger two-way star on a supermax who just proved he can be the guy when everything is on his shoulders. The 4-time MVP turned back the clock in this year's playoffs, reverting to a primary scoring and facilitating role with Doncic sidelined with a hamstring injury, to help LA improbably advance to the second round. LeBron covered for an injured Luka and still dragged the Lakers forward. That's the kind of production you don't easily replace. But Brown, coming off the best individual season of his career, makes that transition possible in a way that almost no other available player does. The financial architecture of a potential deal then looks something like this. Austin Reaves in a sign and trade, a restructured or departed LeBron creating flexibility, all three of the Lakers' available first-round picks heading east, and possibly a multi-team framework to bridge any remaining salary gap. It's complex. It's layered. It's exactly the kind of deal the NBA has been producing more of in the last 5 years, and the Lakers have the pieces to make it work. In one proposed deal, the Lakers receive Brown, while the Bucks receive Austin Reaves. 3 first-round picks from the Lakers and 2 first-round picks from the Celtics. The Celtics then get Antetokounmpo. That was the earlier framework, the one centered on Boston still getting Giannis. That trade is dead now because Giannis went to Miami. But the structure of it tells you something. Even in those conversations, the Lakers were being positioned as the team who ends up with Brown. This structure was dependent on the Celtics' willingness to part ways with Brown, to pursue an ambitious trade for Antetokounmpo. That willingness, even in that framework, revealed something. Boston was prepared to move Brown for the right return. The Giannis deal fell apart, but Boston's openness didn't close with it. They're still listening. They're still talking. The asking price is just higher now, because they don't need to sell anymore. And that's the trap the Lakers face. They're negotiating with a team that holds all the cards, a team that can afford to wait, that doesn't have a desperate player demanding a trade, and that just watched their guy have the best season of his career. And whoever loses him has to rebuild the narrative all over again. If Boston holds on to him but does not move toward another commitment, speculation will continue. If the Celtics engage seriously on an extension, it would send a much stronger message that the Brown-Tatum core remains the plan. So there's a clock, not a blinking red countdown, but a real deadline that will signal Boston's true intentions. July 26. Watch what happens around that date. If an extension gets announced, the Lakers and everyone else goes back to the drawing board. If silence, the frenzy accelerates. For now, that leaves the Celtics in control of the timeline. Brown has not requested a trade, but Boston has not slammed the door on conversations either. Control. That's the operative word. This isn't Jaylen Brown running to ESPN to demand a trade. This isn't a star holding his team hostage. This is a front office doing cold, calculated math and deciding that the window to extract maximum value might be right now, whether they use it or not. Even though the Boston Celtics seem willing to trade Brown, they are putting a high price on the 5-time All-Star if they do move him. High is an understatement. The ask is historic. 4 first-rounders plus salary is the kind of return teams paid for Kevin Durant, for Anthony Davis, for players who at the time of their trades were considered generational. Brown, who will turn 30 in October, is well on his way to being a Hall of Fame lock. He's one of the best two-way players in the NBA, as well as a proven postseason performer with a championship to his name. A Hall of Fame trajectory. That's the conversation. Not good player, not nice compliment. Hall of Fame. That's what Boston is selling, and that's what the Lakers would be buying. The Boston Celtics continue to field offers for Brown following their unsuccessful pursuit of Antetokounmpo, and the 18-time NBA champions are reportedly asking for a massive return for the former Finals MVP. 18 championships. Boston doesn't move stars without extracting the maximum possible value. It's in their institutional DNA. And right now, the maximum possible value for Jaylen Brown is whatever the most desperate, most visionary, most ambitious front office in the NBA is willing to pay. The Lakers have always been that team. Let's step inside the Lakers situation, because even before Brown's name started flying around, Los Angeles had problems. Real structural problems that the 2025-26 season exposed in ways the organization can't ignore. And understanding those problems is the only way to understand why a Brown trade isn't just appealing, it's almost necessary. The Los Angeles Lakers don't have a soul shivering in their boots. Not when the cornerstone of your franchise is Luka Doncic and Austin Reaves. That ain't going to work, Smith asserted on his podcast. That's a brutal assessment, and it's not coming from someone with a grudge against the Lakers. It's coming from someone who genuinely believes they need more. Doncic and Reaves can fill a stat sheet. They can't fill a trophy case. You have opposing teams salivating at the thought of being guarded by Luka Doncic and Austin Reaves. They don't strike fear in anybody defensively. They can score on anybody. We know how elite they are offensively, he stressed. But they can't stop a cold. That's the diagnosis. Offense, elite. Defense, exploitable. Any team game planning against the Lakers at this point knows exactly where to attack, and they do it every single night without apology. Tim Bontemps laid out the Lakers' challenges plainly. They got to get a bunch of stuff. I mean, they need a lot more athleticism, They need a lot more perimeter defense. They need a real center. They probably need another ball handler, even if they bring back Austin Reaves, beyond just him and Luka Doncic. That's 4 categories: athleticism, perimeter defense, a real center, another ball handler. 4 different needs heading into a summer with limited cap flexibility. The odds of solving all 4 without a blockbuster move are basically 0. Doncic, 27, has reportedly asked the Lakers for an A-list big man to play alongside next season. He said it clearly. He knows what the roster needs. He sees the same film the coaches see. And when you're the best player on the team, probably the best player in the league, you earn the right to say what you need. Doncic needs an A-list running mate. The question is, does that running mate have to be a center, or can it be a wing good enough to change the defensive identity of the whole team? Brown is the physical and athletic wing the Lakers need next to Doncic. He's a dynamic slasher who can score at all 3 levels, combining power and skill in a way to which few perimeter players can compare. Right there. The Lakers need athleticism. Brown has it. They need perimeter defense. Brown provides it. They need another ball handler. Brown averaged over 5 assists last season doing exactly that. He doesn't solve the center problem, but he patches 3 out of 4 holes in one move. That's rare. That's the reason this conversation keeps coming back to LA. Doncic finished the season as the leading scorer in the NBA, averaging 33.5 points per game. Meanwhile, Brown averaged 28.7 points, 6.9 rebounds, and 5.1 assists per game for the Celtics. Put those 2 on the same team. You're looking at 2 of the most productive players in the entire league sharing a locker room. You're looking at a combined offensive output that no defense in the NBA is equipped to handle consistently. Brown is also known to step up during the playoffs, with a career postseason average of 23.0 points per game on 481, 356, 735 shooting. He's done all of this while defending at a high level. Playoff caliber production. That's the thing about Brown that doesn't get enough attention in these trade discussions. Doncic is Doncic. He can carry a team deep in May and June, but he needs a co-star who doesn't disappear when the intensity ratchets up. Brown doesn't disappear. He elevates. And here's something that the box score doesn't capture: the fear factor. When you play against a team with 2 legitimate scorers who can both defend, you can't hide weak defenders. You can't send the other team's star to Reaves' side of the floor all game. With Brown alongside Doncic, there's no escape hatch. Every possession is contested. Every matchup is a problem. That's the kind of team that makes the Western Conference lose sleep. Brown would be a perfect complement to Doncic. That's the basketball case distilled into its simplest form. Doncic is a playmaker. He draws attention, he creates advantages. Brown is a player who converts advantages into points, at the rim, mid-range, and from 3. The pick and roll between the 2 would be almost unguardable. The switch coverage that defenses use to neutralize Doncic would backfire instantly the moment Brown is on the floor with him. Brown is a much better defensive player than what the Lakers currently have in their wing position. He is a clear upgrade and a championship caliber piece, being a former Finals MVP. A former Finals MVP who's still in his prime, still improving, still playing with something to prove. That's the player the Lakers would be getting, not a player chasing past glory, but a player who just had his best individual season and is angry about how his team ended. Brown's two-way game is one of the best, and Doncic is all too familiar with it. That familiarity isn't a problem, it's a selling point. The worst-case scenario for any co-star pairing is chemistry issues. 2 players who don't understand each other's game, who get in each other's way, who compete for the same spaces on the floor. Brown and Doncic have already shared a floor in high-stakes moments. They know exactly what the other brings. The transition wouldn't take a year to figure out. It would start working almost immediately. Now, there's a counter-argument that doesn't get enough airtime in this conversation, and it matters. Because if Brown comes to the Lakers, it doesn't just change what the team looks like, it changes what Brown looks like. If there is a possibility that Brown's era at Boston comes to an end, it seems unlikely he would want to be yet another co-star. He has shown that he can lead as the main guy, and that will be on his mind whenever trade talks arise. Brown just spent an entire season being the undisputed top option. He ran the offense. He was the first and last call every night, every timeout, every crunch time possession, every playoff moment. It was on him, and he delivered. Now someone wants him to step back into a role as Doncic's sidekick. That's not an insult to Brown. Doncic is one of the best players on the planet. Playing next to him means easier shots, better situations, less defensive attention. But it also means less control, less agency. And for a player who spent years battling for respect, who's currently in a public war with ESPN about how he's perceived, giving up the alpha role might feel like a step backward, even if the team is objectively better. Celtic legend Paul Pierce argued, Jaylen Brown, he did the most with the least out of all these guys, and maybe Cade Cunningham. But Brown didn't have a second all-star. A lot of these guys did. Pierce is right. Brown's season was specifically impressive because of the absence of help. The isolation, the weight, going to the Lakers flips that. Suddenly he has all the help in the world, which is good for winning. But it also means the credit gets shared, and Brown knows that. He's not naive. He reads the room. He saw how quickly the narrative shifted when he was in Boston. One Twitch stream, and suddenly people are questioning his character, his leadership, his future with the franchise. In Los Angeles, next to Doncic, in the media capital of the world, the microscope doesn't get smaller, it gets about 10 times bigger. But here's the flip side of that argument. If Brown and Doncic win a championship together, nobody ever questions either of them again. Not about leadership, not about being a co-star versus a star. A ring answers everything. And it's the one thing Brown, with all his individual accolades, hasn't done without Tatum. Winning it in purple and gold with Luka would rewrite his legacy in a way that nothing else could. With the Lakers hitching their future to the duo of Doncic and Reaves, they undoubtedly have one of the most potent playmaking duos in the entire NBA. After all, Doncic led the league in scoring last season, while Reaves averaged a career-high 23.3 points on 49% shooting. While getting buckets will not be an issue, stopping the other team from doing so will. That's the Reaves situation laid bare. He's a scorer, a good one, but he doesn't change the identity of the team the way Brown would. Defense wins championships, and right now the Lakers are built to entertain, not to suffocate. Smith believes the Lakers need more defense around their core, arguing that the rest of the league has little reason to fear their current roster. That's not a comfortable thing to hear when you've got the leading scorer in the NBA suiting up for you, but it's the truth. Doncic scores 33 a night, and the Lakers still can't convince the league to respect them defensively. Brown fixes that overnight. One player, one trade, changes the entire identity of the franchise. So the Lakers' motivation isn't abstract, it's urgent. The West is not getting easier. The Spurs are rising. The Thunder just won a championship. The Heat added Giannis. The league is moving fast, and the window to capitalize on Doncic's prime doesn't stay open forever. Every summer without a legitimate co-star is a summer wasted, and wasted summers in the NBA have a way of snowballing into missed opportunities that franchises spend a decade trying to recover from. For the Lakers, getting Brown would see them avoid the complex nature of getting directly involved in trying to get Antetokounmpo instead. That's actually a significant point. The Giannis trade is done. That door is closed, but the Lakers still need a superstar caliber addition, and the two alternatives left on the market, whoever's available, don't come close to what Brown brings. He's the best realistic option, possibly the best available option, period. The look is enticing, but the Lakers would still need to surround the duo with good pieces like an interior presence. However, Brown's contract may limit some flexibility to get their needed center target. That's the honest caveat. Getting Brown doesn't solve everything. The center question remains. The luxury tax implications of a Brown contract alongside Doncic, and whatever is left of the roster will constrain every subsequent move. LA would be trading flexibility for star power. That's a bet they've made before. The question is whether they can afford to make it again. Reaves has shown improvement in recent seasons, but compared to what Brown may bring, it looks like a no-brainer for the Lakers to trade. No-brainer doesn't mean painless. No-brainer means the conclusion is clear, even when the process is expensive. And that's exactly what this trade is shaping up to be. Expensive, complicated, uncertain, and completely worth it if it goes through. Let's talk about what Doncic himself brings to this equation, because it's not just about what the Lakers need. It's about what Luka wants, and what Luka wants tends to shape what the Lakers do. Jaylen Brown was all of us when the Dallas Mavericks traded Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers last season. That might be like one of the worst trades of all time. He was seen saying in footage on the Netflix Starting 5 docuseries that, quote, Brown called the trade that brought Doncic to LA one of the worst trades of all time. and now those same two men might end up on the same team. The NBA has a sense of humor that no fiction writer could replicate. The Doncic reaction from players around the league was particularly interesting. It was a trade that absolutely stunned fans and analysts of the game, and based on that trailer, also astonished players around the league. Brown was one of those astonished players. He watched that trade happen from the Eastern Conference and couldn't believe it. And now, barely a year later, he might be watching film on how to play alongside the man. He couldn't believe anyone would trade away. The basketball irony here is almost poetic. Brown guarded Doncic in the finals. Brown called the Mavericks deal one of the worst in history. And Brown is now one of the most discussed potential co-stars in Doncic's Lakers era. The NBA doesn't do small moments. It does full circles. ESPN's Stephen A. Smith has already made a case for the Lakers to acquire Brown to slot alongside Doncic. Give me the Lakers before you give me the Golden State Warriors, if you're talking about what's an ideal spot for a guy like Jaylen Brown. Smith said on Friday's First Take, Stephen A. is pushing the Lakers hard here. And his reasoning isn't just emotional, it's tactical. Brown in LA gives Brown a platform, a market, a franchise with championship equity, and a superstar who makes everything around him better. The media attention alone changes the stakes. Boston is its own massive market, but Los Angeles is where brands are built in ways that transcend basketball. LeBron understood that. Magic understood it. Kobe lived it. And Brown, who's been very deliberate about his image, his brand, and how he's perceived, has to know that the Lakers' platform is unlike anything he'd find in Houston or Portland or Atlanta. So when you strip away the salary talk and the pick-and-roll diagrams and the trade frameworks, you're left with a simple question. Does Jaylen Brown want to be a Laker? And everything we've seen from him publicly says he wants to stay in Boston. But everything happening around him suggests Boston may be making that choice for him. Which brings us to the heart of this story. Who actually has the power here, and how do they use it? Boston Celtics basketball runs on something deeper than trades and salary sheets. It runs on history, on culture, on the kind of institutional pride that 18 championships build over 70 years of basketball. And right now, that pride is doing battle with something very uncomfortable, the cold math of what comes next. Brown was the main subject of the Giannis Antetokounmpo to Boston saga that persisted for weeks. After Boston was unable to strike a deal for Antetokounmpo, many believe Brown and the Celtics' relationship has come to a point of no return. A point of no return. That's a phrase you don't hear about. A franchise's own star, without understanding that something has fundamentally shifted. The failed Giannis deal didn't just fall apart. It rearranged the architecture of how Brown sees himself in Boston's plans. And yet Brown said he'd stay for 10 more years if he could. He didn't ask for a trade. He didn't plant stories in the press. He went to France, went on his Twitch stream, and talked about how much he loved the season. The front office is the one making noise about moving him. And that gap between what Brown publicly says and what Boston privately considers is the space where this entire saga lives. According to Siegel, Brown has not approached Celtics president Brad Stevens or any member of Boston's front office to request a trade. The report comes after weeks of speculation about his future, including Boston's failed pursuit of Giannis before the Milwaukee Bucks star was traded to the Miami Heat. Siegel reported that the Celtics offered a package involving Brown and future draft assets in an effort to land Antetokounmpo. So Boston made the first move. Boston put Brown in the package. Not Brown, not his agent, the organization, and now they have to live with the consequence of that decision. A star who's loyal but now knows his value has been monetized internally. That context explains why Brown's name has not gone away. But it also shows why Boston's position is more complicated than simply shopping Brown. The Celtics were reportedly willing to discuss Brown for a player of Antetokounmpo's caliber, the type of move that could immediately reshape their championship outlook alongside Jason Tatum. The key phrase there, a player of Antetokounmpo's caliber. Boston wasn't trading Brown for picks. They were trading him for a different superstar, one they thought would make the team demonstrably better. That's a very different decision than what some teams are now asking them to do, which is trade Brown for picks and role players. If the Celtics trade Brown without acquiring Giannis, it would signal sweeping changes to Boston's short and long-term plans. Sweeping changes. Full rebuild territory. Because if you trade your best player, the one who just led you to a 56-win season, the one who's on pace for the Hall of Fame. Without getting another star back, you're telling your fan base that the window is closed, that you're starting over. That's a decision that echoes for a decade. The Celtics' first-round exit has seemingly called his future in Boston into question. But here's the question that doesn't get asked enough. Does one first-round exit really warrant blowing up a core that won a championship 2 years ago? That's the tension at the heart of Boston's decision-making process. The franchise is young enough to still be competitive. Tatum is coming back from his Achilles. Brown just had his best season. Is this really the moment to tear it down? The counter-argument, and it's a strong one, is that the moment you put a player in a trade package is the moment you change the relationship. Even if Brown says all the right things publicly, even if he claims he wants to stay forever, both sides know now that the front office was willing to move him. That knowledge doesn't disappear. It sits in the room at every contract negotiation, every team meeting, every huddle during a tight playoff game. The trust isn't completely broken, but it's cracked. And in the NBA, cracked trust tends to become broken trust over time. Not overnight, not in a single blow-up, but slowly in the gap between what gets said publicly and what gets decided in boardrooms at midnight. Boston knows this. Stevens knows this, which is why the extension conversation, the one happening around that July 26 date, is the most important event on the Celtics off-season calendar. Brown will become eligible for a 2-year, $142 million extension from the Celtics beginning July 26. That date matters because keeping Brown and extending Brown are not exactly the same thing. If Boston holds on to him but does not move toward another commitment, speculation will continue. If the Celtics engage seriously on an extension, it would send a much stronger message that the Brown-Tatum core remains the plan. It all comes down to that date, July 26. What happens around it will define the rest of this summer. If Boston extends Brown, the trade conversation, at least for this offseason, is over. Every team that's been making calls hangs up. The Lakers move to their next option. Houston pivots. Portland regroups. And Boston sends a message to the league that the Brown-Tatum era, disrupted by injury and chaos this past season, is still the plan. It would be a vote of confidence in a player who just carried the franchise on his back for an entire year without his co-star. If Boston doesn't extend him, if July 26 comes and goes without a new commitment, the bidding war Brian Windhorst anticipated becomes real. Every team's offer gets more serious. The asking price for 4 first-rounders becomes a baseline, not a ceiling. And somewhere in Los Angeles, Rob Pelinka picks up the phone and starts having a very different kind of conversation than anything that's happened so far this summer. The Celtics ultimately believe they don't have to make a deal, that they can repair any damage to their relationship with the All-NBA wing, coming off his best season. That belief might be right. Relationships in the NBA have survived worse. Players have stayed at franchises that tried to trade them and gone on to win titles together afterward. It happens. Boston's confidence in their ability to reset this relationship isn't delusional. But there's a version of this where Boston's confidence tips into stubbornness, where the front office's insistence that they don't have to make a deal becomes a barrier to a deal they probably should make because the window isn't infinite. Brown turns 30 in October. Tatum is coming off a torn Achilles, which is a career-altering injury. Regardless of how well the recovery goes, the championship window Boston thought was wide open has already started to narrow. The smart play, the calculated play, might actually be trading Brown now, at peak value, before that window narrows further, getting 4 first-rounders plus a quality player. While Brown is at the absolute top of his market is better business than holding on for 2 more years, watching the dynamic get increasingly uncomfortable, and then dealing him when his contract is harder to move and the team's patience has run out. Boston knows this, which is why they keep answering the phone, even while publicly saying they don't need to sell. Brown subsequently won NBA Finals MVP during Boston's title run in 2024 and finished as an NBA MVP finalist, with Tatum recovering from a torn Achilles. During most of the 2025-26 regular season, 2 seasons after they tried to trade him for Durant, he was your Finals MVP. 1 season after being dangled for Giannis, he was 5th in MVP voting and the engine of a 56-win team. If Boston keeps testing his loyalty, at some point even the most patient star runs out of forgiveness. The clock is ticking, not in the dramatic countdown clock way, in the quiet, inevitable way that all things in basketball eventually tick. Players age, Relationships sour. Draft picks used in trades become players on championship teams elsewhere. Boston has an incredible asset in Jaylen Brown, and they're sitting at a fork in the road. Extend him and recommit, or move him for the kind of return that reshapes the franchise for the next 5 years. Both choices are defensible. Not choosing is the only option that leads nowhere. Meanwhile, Brown himself is handling all of this with a kind of public composure that's remarkable given what's happening around him. He went on his Twitch stream, he went to France, he called out ESPN, he challenged the media narrative without crumbling under it. Whether you agree with his methods or not, the man has not lost his mind in a moment when many players would. After weeks of bubbling tension following the Celtics' disappointing postseason exit, Brown called out ESPN and Smith, specifically during his trip to France. Smith officially fired back at the All-Star forward, escalating this war of words. The feud with Stephen A. Smith is its own ongoing storyline, and one that ironically keeps Brown's name in the headlines, in a way that probably doesn't help Boston's negotiating position. Every time this beef generates a news cycle, the whole league is reminded that Brown is available. Calling Brown soft for his response, Smith challenged with a somewhat hilarious flex. It's almost absurd watching one of the best players in basketball trade barbs with a TV host across social media, while simultaneously being the subject of a multi-team bidding war worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But this is the NBA in 2026. Everything happens in public. Every negotiation has a media layer, and Brown, whether intentionally or not, is playing his part in this circus with a confidence that most players in his position don't have. Recently, Brown has been making plenty of headlines since the Celtics' first-round exit. He claimed this was his favorite season in the NBA, stirring controversy and even raising doubts about his future with the franchise. He is also currently involved in a beef with ESPN's Stephen A. Smith. Favorite season, first-round exit, public feud, trade rumors. Most players would be hiding under a rock right now. Brown is doing Twitch streams from Paris. There's a reading of all this that says Brown is unraveling, that the chaos around him has gotten to him, that the public statements are a defense mechanism, that the bravado is masking genuine anxiety about his future. And there's another reading that says Brown is exactly who he's always been, a player who processes stress through action, who speaks his mind regardless of consequences, who simply doesn't care what the narrative says about him. Both readings are probably true in some measure. The thing about Brown is that he's always been hard to pin down. Harder than the simple story the media wants to tell about him. He's not a villain. He's not a victim. He's a man navigating an impossible situation, loyal to a franchise that publicly considered trading him, in a standoff with the media world that covers him, on the verge of either a career-defining extension or a franchise-changing trade. And he's doing it all while the whole basketball world watches. According to a Clutch Points insider, among those with interest in the Celtics' two-way star, both the Houston Rockets and New Orleans Pelicans have held trade dialogue with Boston. Dialogue. Not offers, not agreed frameworks. Dialogue. That's where things stand as of right now. Conversations happening, temperature being taken, nothing finalized, which means the door is still very much open for the Lakers to walk through, if they're willing to pay the price. Siegel reported that the Celtics are still listening to inquiries on Brown. He also named the Houston Rockets and New Orleans Pelicans as teams that have had trade dialogue with Boston. Listening. That's the operative word. Not calling teams, not aggressively shopping, listening to what comes in. That's a front office posture that signals, we haven't decided to move him, but we'll know the right offer when we hear it. And right now, no one has made that offer yet. The Lakers haven't formally entered those conversations yet, not according to any official report. But the gravitational pull of this situation keeps dragging their name back into it. Every analyst, every radio show, every podcast, every basketball fan with a pulse looks at the Lakers roster needs and Brown's situation in Boston and arrives at the same conclusion. If there's a team that should be doing everything possible to make this trade happen, it's Los Angeles. If the Celtics make a play for a star, former Finals MVP, Jaylen Brown will almost certainly be part of the deal. That's the framework Boston is operating within. They're not actively selling Brown for picks. They're holding him as a potential chip for the next franchise-altering move, whatever that move turns out to be. If another superstar becomes available, Brown is the key that unlocks the door. If no superstar becomes available, Brown might just stay in Boston and they figure out the extension. But the NBA offseason is long, Free agency starts June 30. Trades happen every day between now and the start of camp. The LeBron situation resolves itself one way or another. The extension deadline on July 26 arrives, and in the middle of all of it, one team or two teams or three teams might put together a package that Brad Stevens can't say no to. The offer doesn't exist yet. That doesn't mean it won't exist in a week. This is the nature of NBA front office chess. You don't see the end of the game from move 3. You play it out, you see what your opponent does, and you respond. Boston is waiting for the right response. Los Angeles is calculating how to make it. And somewhere in all of this, in the picks, and the salaries and the conversations, and the public feuds and the Twitch streams from France, a decision is forming that will define both franchises for the rest of the decade. Let's say it happens. Let's say the Lakers and the Celtics find a way to bridge the gap. The picks, the salaries, the players, the frameworks. Let's say Jaylen Brown puts on a purple and gold jersey and stands next to Luka Doncic on a stage at the Crypto.com arena. What does the NBA actually look like after that? It looks different, not just for the Lakers, not just for Boston, for everybody. Because a trade of this magnitude, a finals MVP, a 28-point scorer, a lockdown wing, moving from one conference giant to another, sends shockwaves through every front office in the league. It changes what's possible. It changes what's necessary. It triggers responses from teams that weren't planning on doing anything this summer. The outcome will test the front office's long-term vision and could trigger a chain reaction across the league this offseason. Chain reaction. The Cavaliers have to respond. The Thunder, the reigning champions, have to evaluate. The Warriors have to decide whether this forces their hand. The Heat, fresh off acquiring Giannis, suddenly have to think about whether their title window is narrowing before it even opens. One trade changes the entire ecosystem. Start with the Lakers themselves. If Brown lands in LA, the team that exists on the other side of that trade looks completely different from what we've seen. Not just different, genuinely scary to play against. Brown is the physical and athletic wing the Lakers need next to Doncic. He's a dynamic slasher who can score at all three levels, combining power and skill in a way to which few perimeter players can compare. Putting on purple and gold isn't just a jersey change. It's a statement about who he is in the next chapter of his career. And the statement is interesting. It says, I've proven I can carry a team. Now I want to win. It says, I'm not afraid of playing next to the best. It says, being a Laker in the most scrutinized market in professional sports doesn't intimidate me. That kind of move, choosing the hardest path over the comfortable one, has historically defined how superstars are remembered. LeBron went to Miami and people called him a coward. He won 2 rings and rebuilt his story. History doesn't remember the criticism. It remembers the trophies. Brown, who will turn 30 in October, is well on his way to being a Hall of Fame lock. He's one of the best two-way players in the NBA, as well as a proven postseason performer with a championship to his name. Hall of Fame trajectory, 1 championship, 1 finals MVP, now coming off his best individual season. If Brown adds a second ring, this time in Los Angeles, in the Luka Doncic era, the conversation about his legacy changes completely. He goes from great player who won a title to essential piece of 2 different championship eras in 2 different cities. That's an uncommon story. Not a lot of players get to do that, and the players who have done it, the ones who've won championships with multiple teams and been essential to both runs, tend to be remembered as something more than just very good. They're remembered as the players who made winning happen wherever they went. That's a legacy worth chasing. A deal with Boston for Brown is the kind of franchise-altering move the Lakers may need in the Luka Doncic era. Franchise-altering, not roster-adjusting, not depth-adding. Franchise-altering, the kind of move that shows up in History of the Lakers documentaries 15 years from now. Brown in LA alongside Doncic is the kind of pairing that gets written into the mythology of a franchise. And the Lakers, more than almost any team in professional sports, live in mythology. And then there's the Boston side of it, the aftermath for Celtics fans. Because if this trade happens, the pain is real and immediate. You're watching your finals MVP walk out the door. You're watching the player who carried you through a title run and then carried you again without his co-star get sent to the franchise you've hated since Bill Russell and Jerry West. This isn't just a trade. For a Celtics fan, this is a wound. The Lakers, of all franchises, the Lakers getting Jaylen Brown would be the kind of thing that takes years to metabolize. you sell it as, we got 4 first-rounders and we're going to build something incredible around Tatum. And intellectually, fans understand that. But emotionally, watching Brown suit up against Boston in a Lakers uniform the first time, that's not a box score, that's a gut punch. Which is exactly why Stevens has to be sure. Not 90% sure, not 95% sure. Completely unreservedly certain that the return is worth it and that the path forward without Brown is credible. Because if Boston trades him, Tatum misses time and the picks turn out to be lottery protected late firsts from playoff teams, that's a disaster. The margin for error in a trade of this magnitude is essentially zero. Stevens knows it, the Celtics front office knows it, and that knowledge is a big part of why they're still listening instead of committing. ESPN's Brian Windhorst anticipated a bidding war for Brown now that the Celtics made him available in the Antetokounmpo trade talks. That bidding war is coming. Maybe it's already started in rooms we don't have access to. The public conversation around Brown is intense enough. The private conversations between front offices are probably 10 times more intense. Every team that believes it's 1 star away from a championship is making a case to Boston right now. Those likely won't be the only trades to happen between now and the official June 30 start time for free agency. If the past few days are any indication, teams are going to be aggressive this year in pulling the trigger on deals. Aggressive, that's the temperature of this offseason. Teams aren't waiting. They're not playing it cautious. They're making moves, sometimes surprising ones, sometimes seismic ones, before the official calendar even flips. Brown's deal could happen at any moment, not next month. Any moment. Nothing can be dismissed in the NBA's current landscape. Clearly, the Lakers know what it takes to acquire a superstar. Whether it's via free agency or a trade, they've done it before. Shaquille O'Neal, Pau Gasol, Anthony Davis, the Lakers have a history of acquiring the best available player and building a championship around that acquisition. Jaylen Brown is the best available player right now. The history is right there. The need is right there. And the door, cracked open by Boston's willingness to at least listen, is right there too. What happens if it doesn't happen? What if Boston extends Brown in late July, closes the door, and the Lakers spend the offseason patching holes instead of making a move? The Lakers retool. They try to address the center need. They keep Reaves, they keep Doncic, and they add whatever pieces they can afford within the constraints of a limited cap situation. It's not catastrophic. Doncic is still one of the best players on the planet. A team built around him can win a lot of basketball games, but without a true co-star of Brown's caliber, the championship conversation becomes speculative rather than concrete. Brown may not be a 2-time like Antetokounmpo, but he is the best possible trade outcome the Lakers can hope for this offseason. However unlikely it may seem. However unlikely. That qualifier is important. This isn't a done deal. This isn't a trade that's been announced or agreed to in principle. It's a possibility, a compelling, logical, narratively perfect possibility, surrounded by enormous financial and logistical complexity. The Lakers wanting Brown and Brown landing in LA are 2 very different things. And right now, we're firmly in the territory of the first, waiting to see if it becomes the second. So where does this all land? Boston has a finals MVP they publicly tried to trade, a player who said he wants to stay, a front office that hasn't slammed the door, and an asking price that would make most GMs faint. The Lakers have the need, the star power in Doncic, and a history of making the big move when the moment calls for it. The pieces are there. The motivation is real. The only question is whether the price and the willingness meet at the right moment. Brown has not requested a trade, but Boston has not slammed the door on conversations either. The rumor saga is still alive. Still alive. That's where we are. Not completed. Not dead, alive. Which in NBA offseason terms means anything can happen between now and the moment training camps open. The Jaylen Brown to the Lakers conversation is not over. It might just be getting started. What we know for certain is this: the offseason of 2026 is already one of the most volatile in recent NBA history. Giannis moved, LaMelo moved, and now Brown's name is echoing through every arena, every front office, every podcast, and every barbershop debate in America. Whatever happens next, extension, trade, or a summer of drawn-out uncertainty, the Brown situation is the thread that ties the entire offseason together. And at the center of it, in all his complicated, defiant, transcendently talented glory, Jaylen Brown is waiting to see what his own